More now about that announcement from the Home Secretary Theresa May this lunchtime, who told MPs that there will be a six-week public consultation on the way that the police in England and Wales use stop and search powers. Mrs May said the government had to recognise concerns from people had to recognise concerns that ethnic minorities are being targeted disproportionately. Let's talk to Nick Glynn. Now, he's a police officer, but he's also had first-hand experience of being stopped and searched. He also works now with the racial equality think tank, the Runnymede Trust. Hello, a very good afternoon to you.
Hi.
You're a police officer, but you've been stopped and searched. People watching this might be rather surprised. Tell us about your experiences.
I've been stopped probably about 30 times in my life in a variety of situations, most of the time when driving actually, but I've also been stopped on the street. My most recent experience was a couple of months ago when I was stopped and there was a question over an ID card that I'd used, and the officer said that they thought it was weren't sure that it was genuine, and I was had to go through that process in front of a load of people. And wasn't given the rights that I know I'm actually entitled to, given no explanation for it, and you know, it was a very bad experience actually, I have to say.
And what, I mean, what happens? Because you must tell them pretty quickly that you're a serving police officer.
On that occasion, they did know that I was a serving police officer, but actually it appeared to make no difference at the time. I think really what that highlights is how important an issue stop and search is, and it does affect different groups in different ways. And I have some friends who've never been stopped by the police. I have other friends who've been stopped many times, and the statistics that we all know speak for themselves. So I really welcome the Home Secretary saying that her announcement today that there's going to be a consultation, which I think is really important, that there's going to be a review, and that her statement saying that the all uses of stop and search should be, you know, it should be reduced, but it should also only be done when is necessary. I think that's a really important step.
And yet, on the flip side, you must presumably, in your job, have been in situations where the people around you have been discussing whether to carry out a stop and search for whatever reason. I mean, have you been party to those sort of conversations, and have you been in situations where you think, actually, you have no reason for stopping this man?
Well, I've certainly been in those sorts of situations in the past. What I've been able to do more recently is to design and indeed deliver some training for police officers. We found that police officers hadn't had training in stop and search. Some of them had been police officers for 20 years and had no training on it other than what they received in their initial training. So certainly some of the work I've been involved in has meant that officers have had refresher training, and it's been highlighted to them the importance of the impact of stop and search, the impact it has on the individual. I know that the Home Secretary today talked about the potential waste of police time that ineffective stop and search can be, but there is also a cost every time a stop and search occurs. It has an impact on the individual, it can be embarrassing, it can be upsetting, and it has a ripple effect through that person, their family and their friends. And so whilst I welcome moves to make the admin and the paperwork around stop and search more effective and more efficient, also the fact that it has an impact on the individual should be taken into account, and I'm sure that will form part of the consultation through work that's been done by the Runnymede Trust and by the Open Society, who have done a lot of work in this area over the last few years. And
I mean, Theresa May, one of the things she's talking about today is that it needs to be intelligence-led. Presumably you agree with that from everything you're saying, but is your experience that quite often it is clearly simply not intelligence-led? What is it done? Just done on a hunch?
I think you're right. It needs to be intelligence-led, and where there are certain areas in the country that are mentioned in the Equality and Human Rights Commission's report where police forces have changed their approach to the use of stop and search, they've made it more intelligence-led. That has meant that there's been a big reduction in the use of the tactic, which has a number of benefits, as I've just talked about. The arrest rate has gone up actually because the tactic is being used sparingly, but it's being used more efficiently and targeted more effectively. So when it is intelligence-led, it can be a useful tactic. But it's important to say as well, there are many other policing tactics that can be used to fight crime, and stop and search is only one of those.
And when you talk about your friends and the friends you know who've been stopped and searched, the friends you know who never have, are we basically talking about racial profiling? It's your white friends who are far less likely to be stopped and searched.
I think the figures speak for themselves. You know, it's very clear that there is a disparity there, and I'm actually doing some work with De Montfort University at the moment, having a look at that to try and understand what is going on there. But yes, I mean, I certainly have friends who've never been stopped. I have friends who've been stopped many times, and there does tend to be a pattern. I think it's also interesting that some police officers themselves have never been stopped, and therefore they don't necessarily understand what that experience is like. And so certainly in the training that we've designed, that is highlighted, the impact of it is highlighted to them, and that makes them, I think, stop and think before they use the power, which is a good thing to do.
Well, Nick Glynn, you have certainly articulated it brilliantly for us this afternoon. We do appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for joining us. Nick Glynn there talking to us from Nottingham. You're watching BBC